If you are like most of my clients, you are happy to be back to routine, happy to be back to your over functioning habits because the Christmas break brings up vulnerability. You have idle time to realize how disconnected you are. You might even not be able to put your finger on what's off. You might struggle to relax. Those around you are just telling you, why can't you just relax and enjoy? One of my private clients said that her husband made a sideways comment to her about how she's always needs to be in control. And let me tell you something, as a high achieving, overgiving, people-pleasing woman that strives for perfection and has so much success in career, the skills that got you success in career are not the skills that are going to get you success in your intimate partnership. If you want to have connected sex, if you want to feel seen, supported, if you want to stop having the same arguments on repeat or having to ask for the same thing to get done 5 times, then let's work together. Let me guide you down the pleasure path because I know you. I know that the holidays brought up a lot. It shone a light on all the cracks that were already there. And the truth is, you just didn't have the distractions. So you were seeing them. You probably read your first fiction book in a while. You probably went on a lovely vacation and had people say, why can't you just be happy at some point throughout the holidays? And if that is you and you want to get back in touch with the connected, radiant, turned on woman that your partner desires, I want you to head to the show notes and apply. I have 2 spots left to work with me privately, and we can get on a call and discuss what is the next right step for you and your relationship. This is completely custom, completely tailored. I know you've done all the things. You've checked your hormones, you've done the therapy, you've done so much personal development, but what you haven't done is focused on someone who understands alpha women in relationship. So if my work speaks to you and you do not want to live another year distracting yourself with work and achievements where it looks really good on the outside, but it feels super unfulfilling on the inside, head to the show notes, fill out an application, and apply. My clients' partners are buying them flowers for no reason, doing the invisible workload without being asked, and they are having more orgasms, better connected sex than they even had at the beginning of their relationship. And I'm here to tell you that that is possible for you. So head to the show notes and apply. Before I bring on today's guest, I wanted to say, if you are a superwoman, you probably like control. It was a mechanism that we learned as a child to keep ourselves safe. If we could think 10 steps ahead, if we could make sure that everyone was around us was happy, then we wouldn't get hurt. We probably didn't have people around us that helped us to manage our big emotions. So we learned to control and we got rewarded for being able to control. And that is why you are so successful. That is why you are here listening. But sometimes what we really want is surrender. And something that I have learned by working with high achieving women for over 10 years is that we need to occupy one state or the other. And that is completely dominant or completely submissive. And that is what we are going to talk about today. Today's guest is a professional dominatrix, one of my teachers. Her name is Colette Pervette, and I cannot wait for you to hear this conversation. Hello, superwomen. Today I have an extra special guest for you, and I want to welcome Colette.
Hello.
I'm so happy to have you. I cannot wait to share more about you, your work. Can you tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, so I am Colette Pervette. I am a professional dominatrix. I've been a pro dom for almost 20 years now. I have a PhD in education, so I guess I'm by default an educatrix. I teach
Love
women to
that.
become I teach women to become the dominatrix of their visions. And so I offer a course called Mistressclass, and it is a training to help women come into their power and learn how to play with their power. And I think that is kind of what I do in a nutshell.
I love it. That's perfect. So, the ladies listening, we are superwomen. We are in our power in career, but we really struggle with power dynamics in relationship. And in fact, most of them don't even know what power dynamics are. They don't know what BDSM is, and they probably really don't even know what a dom is. And especially, I love like femdom and that whole your approach. I just absolutely love it. But for somebody just getting just learning, kind of dipping their toe into this world, what is a dominatrix to you?
I think a dominatrix is a woman who is in control. She is calling the shots. She is creating a scene, building a world in which fantasies are realized. I think a dominatrix is a dream weaver. She knows how to weave her own fantasies as well as her playmates' fantasies into reality. And I think a dominatrix is a very modern, edgy archetype of a woman in power, the divine feminine. And she is someone who knows her power and she also knows how to play with it.
We talk about this all the time in our groups. So, knowing your power, knowing how to play with it. From a lot of us are professionals. We come from, we have degrees like you have a PhD in education. So we're checking the boxes. We're doing things right. We're kind of achieving or going about life on this path that was sort of set out for us and is not really in line with our true desires. So a lot of our listeners have worked really hard. They have a lot of success. And then they get to this point and they're like, I'm not fulfilled. But they got there. They went along this path, but they got there almost in a masculine, achieving, like wanting control for safety, but they don't really have a great relationship with their power. And that's part of what we are exploring. And
Mm-hmm.
they're scared of it in a way. And I guess this is even my um part of my introduction to your work and BDSM just in general, because I was exploring how do I be a good a good dom
Yeah.
or completely surrender and be a good sub, because we're burnt out, we're exhausted, we're really over giving and like thinking 10 steps ahead for everyone. Not I'm trying to describe like the power of somebody at the beginning of their journey when they're working with me. Like they have
Yeah.
power. They have power with money. They have power in their careers, but it doesn't feel integrated and it doesn't feel aligned. Is this making any sense?
Yeah, no, I think what you're saying is that it sounds like there are women out there, and you call them the super women, the women who do it all. They have this job, they have their lives, quote unquote, put together, and yet there's something that feels unfulfilling. And I think that potential possible unfulfillment is coming from a place of recognizing that their subconscious desires are not met, or maybe they're not even exploring their subconscious desires. For someone who is so much in control all the time, there's a part of us the subconscious part of us that wants to let go, and yet we don't know how to let go. And that's the part that we should be exploring and giving voice to and saying, oh, I guess I've been like on top of my shit, calling the shots all the time, and now I'm ready to just let go. And I think that's what both a dom and a sub does really well in a DS dynamic. And it's not only is it the sub's job to dissolve their ego, it's the dom's job to dissolve her own ego. And that is what makes this play so magical. The dissolution of one's ego, of all the ideas of who we think we are, the responsibilities that we think we have, when we step into a scene, into the bedroom, into the dungeon, all of that is gone. You shed all of your layers, and all you do is feel into what you truly want to feel without any judgment of whether this is not who you are, this is not right, this is not feminine, whatever. It doesn't matter. It's completely gone. And all you have to do is feel into what makes you feel pleasurable.
That is such a good summary, and I can feel the listeners relaxing into it. They're like, yes, that is exactly it. And what women that come on this journey with me, feeling pleasurable and all the layers to it, all the shoulds, the pleasure centers in their brain are off. Like they are so much in fight or flight, they haven't explored their desires. They have what I call checkbox sex. So, we're kissing and then maybe there's some oral and hopefully somebody has an orgasm and like, okay, let's check that box for another week or month, whatever their situation they're in their relationship. But none of it is about pleasure. None of it is about exploring these desires. They've almost never been given permission to, and they definitely don't know how to let go. So if somebody's just starting their journey, wanting to explore DS dynamics, if they're kind of turned off, like they're focused on goals, they're focused on achieving, not being in feeling, what do you recommend, or what would you say? Because they're probably even a little bit like scared of the exploration. They need permission. They're good girls.
I think maybe having some exposure to somebody who is in their pleasure is helpful. I don't recommend that everybody should seek out BDSM experiences if they're not curious about it. I think that kink is for the curious. If you ask any kinky person, like what drove them to explore this, it was their curiosity. And if you don't have that curiosity, it doesn't work. And so I think the first like space to step into is a space of curiosity. And I think curiosity is the opposite of judgment. And so that means you have to dissolve your judgment about what this is and how wrong it is or crazy it is, and be able to just be like, wait, I think I have some kinky fantasy, some desire that I don't know how to ask for. I don't know how to get it, but it's there. And so I wouldn't recommend it for everyone. I would only recommend it for those who have just an inkling, at least a little inkling of a curiosity and a desire to let go and to experience something that they know deep down inside there's a possibility that they might enjoy it. Because if you're in survival mode, you're not in adventure mode. You're here to survive. And I wouldn't recommend it for someone who is just focused on like surviving. I think like kink is for those who are ready for adventure, to dive into the unknown. And I don't think it's for everybody. I think it's for those who are open, curious, and ready for an adventure. And if there's some part of you that feels like, oh, okay, I guess I am curious. I guess I am ready for adventure because I'm stuck in this rut. And at some point, maybe you do find yourself wanting to explore it. And I think that that desire will come to you. So I wouldn't push anyone into it. I would just keep that door open and create a safe space for yourself and for others to be able to express their desires, to explore that realm.
I love that. I love that answer. And because some people in the DS like space, the kink space, it's like, oh, everyone's kinky and you're just repressing. Or I can tell when we get the pleasure centers back on and we go from, high achieving to receiving explore space, you can tell who the kinky ones are and who just are naturally gravitating towards it. And it isn't for all of the women listening. Like some of them are just really happy to be having orgasms again after they work with me. And I love that's okay.
Yeah.
It's for who's curious and for who's ready.
And I think like maybe it just even requires like some exposure to that. I mean, reading the book story, the story of O, I think is a good way into piquing your curiosity. I think being exposed to some film, media, books, something that also when you read it, you're like, huh, there's something there. I feel something. I feel a spark of like excitement, or maybe I'm feeling something down there. Okay, maybe this is something I should explore. And so maybe if you're not sure about it, just expose yourself to some films that are kinky or books that are kinky and see what it feels like to come across a scene that all of a sudden kind of resonates with you. So that could be a way in. Being in your body, that's what kink is about. It's being able to let go of any ideas of what you think you need or want or who you think you are, and being able just to feel in your body. I'm like, oh, I guess that does feel good to even think about that. Maybe I should explore it, huh? Or maybe I'm seeing someone get tied up right now in this like shibari video, and that looks awesome. So I would say expose yourself to a wide range of kink that is already out there. I think the time that we live in right now is a great time to be able to be exposed to it. Yeah, there's so much out there in media, in social media, and films and books that you can very easily, quickly go down that rabbit hole and see what resonates and what doesn't.
I Shibari is something that after doing Mistressclass, I'm like, that piqued my curiosity for sure.
Yeah.
One of my recommendations for all of my clients is, have you heard of Dipsy? It's an audio
Yes.
erotica app.
Yeah.
And just as a way to explore anything really,
Yeah.
and it's easy, and but that's when a lot of my clients are like, oh, I do like this DS stuff, and I love how my body feels when like he's doming or vice versa. So it's really just a good way to explore. And if it's a no, right, if you're
Hmm.
listening to something and they're short, they're like 9 minutes long, and you're not turned
Hmm.
on by it, then and it's a good way to keep exploring different things.
Yeah. No, I think that's great to explore that. I haven't listened to Dipsy in a while. Are there?
There's more and more kink stuff
Oh,
coming
that's
on there.
great. That's
Yes. Yeah,
great.
it was. And I was an early adopter of that. And it was there's more kink, let's say
Oh,
that,
that's so
which
good.
is great. Yeah. So many of these superwomen, they're living for what other people think and what they should do. So as you've created this whole career and you do it beautifully and you're clearly the real deal. You have a background in education. You can PhD, excuse me. Let's get this right. And you can tell, and even how you're saying, kinks for the curious, you're not trying to jam this down people's throat to make money. It's very clear that you are passionate about what you do. Was there some shame or stigma that you had to shed to be able to do this as a career?
I think there was definitely shame and stigma around it growing up, and I've always had kinky thoughts and fantasies ever since I was young. And I also converted to Mormonism when I was 10. And that was when I felt a lot of shame and stigma around the fantasies that I had. and tried to suppress them. And it wasn't until I was 18, had sex for the first time, went off to college, and pretty much never returned back to the church, that I was like, okay, this is what feels good. And you know, if I have to choose between like sex and the church, definitely sex. And also I guess I was staying in the church even though I didn't fully believe in everything that was being taught. I just was a people pleaser and didn't know how to leave a church and say, it's not my thing. And so it felt like the right opening was when I left for college. And so I think that the moment that I left that space of like such like repression and suppression of one's sexual desires, I just felt completely free to explore. And I just know that my innate self is a weirdo and a queerdo, and I want to explore these things. And so when I found that my friends were starting at a house of domination as dominatrixes, I was just like, that seems interesting. And even though I didn't have desires at the time to top someone, I wanted to explore what that would be like. And when I did, I was just like, oh my God, this feels so good. And the people that I get to play with are so sweet. I love this. It doesn't feel like work. It just feels like play. And when you could find a job where it doesn't feel like work and it's just play, you keep that job. And so it didn't seem like it was that hard to dive into this. And yes, there was definitely the experience of hiding it from family and from my school when I was getting my PhD. And eventually all of the truth came out. I was outed by my sister and my mom. I did come out to my graduate advisor after I got my PhD, and it feels so good to not hide any of what I do and what I love to do with my family and friends and all the people around me. And so I would say there is no shame at all anymore, but I think the shame that I felt wasn't mine. It was my family members. It was my parents. It was those who I didn't think could understand it, but they have all come around and get it now.
I love that. And it's so very, like, your path is very resonant to the women that I work with, where they're searching for that purpose. And sometimes they are kind of waiting for the right time because they are people pleasers to do it. But once you're in that alignment and it doesn't feel like work, and it's just also similar to me because I was practicing naturopathic medicine for 10 years, sticking needles in men in a very different capacity. But this work about like pleasure and sex and fulfillment, I was called to do it, but I almost started it sort of quietly, and I didn't want to talk about it, and I didn't want family members to know. And then when it really is your purpose, it's just, I don't feel like I work either. It just feels like what I was put here to do.
Yeah, exactly.
2 more questions for you. One of my highest performing podcasts, and this is where we're at on our kink journey with most of our listeners, is about 50 Shades of Grey and why it was such a turn on for the superwoman brain. I recorded this thing like 3 years ago and it still gets a lot of downloads. What do you think? What was the big attraction? What kind of exploded 50 Shades? Because I feel like that's sort of what put BDSM and kink, made it a little more mainstream. Do you agree?
I agree. Yeah, I think 50 Shades of Grey exposed kink to a wider range of people in the mainstream. And, even my mom was talking about it. So it did do something for kink in that it exposed more of what is possible into the mainstream. But I do think it did it in a very inaccurate way. I think it's great that more people are aware that kink exists, but I don't really love the way that it was portrayed in the story. And
That's
that it
exactly
was,
what my podcast is about.
yeah. Yeah.
love the awareness and love the, well, and even my clients were saying like, I'm reading this and I'm turned on by it. Elements of it are like a big yes. And other, like some of it also didn't feel right. And it didn't feel aligned with them in the way that it was portrayed.
Yeah, I think it was like it pathologized kink to some degree. And yeah, I think some scenes are really sexy. And if you could just like isolate those scenes, and that's what I meant by like, if you're not sure, if you're curious yourself to some reading and they're just vignettes and scenes, just like if that turns you on, then that's a sign. But I think that there are probably some scenes and vignettes in 50 Shades that could turn someone on when they read it. They're like, oh, yeah, that's hot. But the whole story and the context of how kink exists and that dynamic isn't, it's problematic. But if we could like just take those scenes, decontextualize from the wider story, then there's lots of stuff that you could get off on. That's why I would recommend the story of O by Pauline Reage. I think it was written in the 60s, and it is by far what I think is the best S&M novel out there. And I think it's a better metric for oneself when reading it. If you get turned on by it, then you should explore it. It's a lot more extreme in the kink, but the way in which the protagonist, the main character O, is consenting to this to some degree, you could see that she wants this, and it feels way more aligned, I think, than to what I think kink is than what 50 Shades portrays.
I'm definitely going to order that and add it to my list of reads.
I think if people knew that there was a book even better than 50 Shades, then yeah, I
And
think
I'm
that
going
one
to
is
add
the
it to my
best.
reading list for my group for next
Yeah,
year.
you
So
should.
love it. Thank you. Okay. Last question. So this superwoman, she, in charge, wants to surrender, maybe read a little bit of 50 Shades, liked some of it, wants to explore kink or couples. I work with a lot of people that are in sexless marriages
Yeah.
and they want to use kink as like, oh, let's just spice this, use this to spice it up. Or they think, you know,
Hmm.
let's kind of try and model what we've seen without, I guess, necessarily fully understanding it. So then the superwoman wants to be dommed, but then she's like, no, don't do that, or not like that. Or, then she's sort of like
Topping from the
topping
bottom.
from the bottom. Yes, often. But do you have any kind of tips for couples, tips for super women that want to start exploring DS dynamics? I know it's a broad question, but from your area of expertise.
I think, if she's topping from the bottom, she may have ideas of how a top should be, and maybe her partner isn't doing isn't well versed in kink, so maybe it just doesn't feel like she could let go as much. In that case, I would recommend for her and her partner to go see a professional. Go see a professional dom, have that pro teach her husband how to top her in a scene that is both educational and titillating and an experience. And I've worked with couples before, and I love the experience of being able to top the women with her partner, and he's learning, and she knows that, oh yes, I am getting topped right now by someone who knows what they're doing, and my partner is learning as well, and there's something hot about that. And if her partner is competent and knows how to be a top and a dom, and I would just recommend adding some fun elements that you haven't put into your bedroom. It could be a blindfold, it could be a flogger, it could be just booking a room at a hotel, so that's a completely different context. And even changing up the scene kind of forces you to be in a new space and inhabit a new sense, part of yourself. So I'd say just switch things up and as many things as you can to, so that you're really feeling like you and your partner are going on an adventure. Maybe it's going to, a play party somewhere. I think it's always fun to like switch things up and see what happens. And so the more that you could bring it out of the usual context that you in the way that you make love, the more that you could adventure out of your usual space.
I love that. And we hire professionals for so many other things. Why would we not do it here? I love it. It's such a
Yes.
good point to make. Well, thank you so much for sharing your insight with us. If the listeners want to hear more, where do they find you?
They could find me on Instagram. I'm at Colette Pervette, and also my website, pervette.com. And I think, yeah, those two spaces.
Thank you. And you have a mistress class coming up. So can they all the info, it'll be on your website and all over your social or
Yes. Yeah, you'll find all the updates on Instagram and also on my website as well. And yeah, I'm pretty active on both spaces.
Colette, thank you so much for sharing your experience with us.
Yeah, I'm so happy to be on here and to share what I can to inspire and to maybe plant some seeds for some play and adventure.
Seeds are planted and they're excited. I know so many people have already put that book, The Story of O, in their cart already. Thank you. Have a great week, everybody. If you like what you heard in this episode, leave me a rating. Your support helps me get discovered by more women like you. Together, we can change the conversation around women's sexual health and pleasure for you, your partners, and generations to come.